Hi guys, welcome to Full Time Devils. I'm Adam McCullough. This is the huge midfield debate. Today, I'm joined by Squawker Dave, John from Global Reds TV, and Paul from United Rantcast and Bleacher Report. And we're here to discuss who is the best partner for Paul Pogba. Now, the guys that are with me today are going to pick, or be forced to pick, one choice for their ideal partner alongside Paul Pogba, and they have to argue why that player is the right choice for Paul Pogba's partner. So guys, are you ready to argue today?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right, you're going to have to, I need a little bit more energy from that, guys. Come on. Are you ready to argue today?
Yeah!
Yes, we're going to turn into your Twitter timeline and just have a big old argument here. No, only joking. It's going to be a little bit more composed. I'm going to let the guys have their say one by one and say who they've picked and just why. Now, Squawker Dave, I'm going to come to you first because your choice. Now, when we were speaking to the other guys before, they were umming and ahhing on who their choice was. They think that Paul Pogba could have a few partners and it could change for the opposition and for each game. But you went right in with 2 feet on this guy, didn't you? Who's your player, Dave?
Well, I think it's got to be Marouane Fellaini. I think we've seen this season that he's really hitting form under Mourinho. Yeah, you might laugh. It is quite funny. I wouldn't have expected this last season, but for me, it works in a number of different aspects. First, the nature of Paul Pogba. Paul Pogba is a central midfielder that likes to drive, likes to get into the penalty area. And what you need next to that is someone very disciplined. I didn't think it'd be Marouane Fellaini. I didn't expect Marouane Fellaini to play this role so well, but he's been brilliant at recycling the ball, keeping it very simple, winning tackles. He's won more tackles than a United player this season. And I think there's other aspects of his game that really help this side out. United have been a bit short late. You know, they've not got that much height going forward for set pieces, defensively for set pieces. He loves to drop elbows like you just showed there, Mac. And I feel like he'll be able to evolve this United team. Tactically quite interesting against Southampton. Marouane Fellaini was drifting left when the ball was in the air. He was basically covering Daley Blind. Daley Blind isn't the best at going to meeting balls, but if you look at Marouane Fellaini's aerial duels that he won, all in front of Daley Blind, and he absolutely bossed it in that area. But also what I quite like about this year is he's playing safe football in a way. I know that Marouane Fellaini isn't great on the ball. He's not going to be playing those forward passes into midfield, but I feel that's what Pogba's going to do. Fellaini can keep it simple, get it to Paul Pogba, and let Paul Pogba pretty much control the game. That is good for me. Statistically, Fellaini's been brilliant on the ball. He's completed more passes than any United player this season, at 31 more than any other player, and he's registered 93 pass accuracy. Against Bournemouth, he misplaced a single pass out of his 76 passes he attempted. So I think Fellaini, his strength, the nature of how he's playing under Jose Mourinho and following his tactical instructions, and how he's playing this safe football at the moment is why I feel Marouane Fellaini is the perfect partner for Paul Pogba.
Dave, excellent argument there, mate. And a beautiful thing that I think Jose Mourinho has come out and said, and I think Paul mentioned this in his fan cam as well the other day, that Jose Mourinho wants the fans to love Marouane Fellaini. I was going to say again, and I don't think that's quite the right phrase because I don't think we've ever quite loved him or embraced him. I know some some fans appreciate the way he plays, but a lot of fans aren't happy with him, and he kind of epitomises the last 3 years for Manchester United. But what Jose has done, especially with the likes of Antonio Valencia and Marouane Fellaini, is he's got the players mentally to a position where the last 3 years haven't happened. You can be the player that was bought for Manchester United when Manchester United spent all that money on him. So I love that Jose Mourinho has done that, and it's part of the reason probably why he's holding on to Phil Jones as well. But anyway, less of that. Guys, Paul, John, have you got any arguments against Marouane Fellaini being the number one choice in terms of reasons just on Marouane? So don't mention your particular players. Go on, Paul.
Yeah, several. I think, actually, I have quite a lot of sympathy for Dave's argument, and it was very well made. But and the numbers tell a story. Like, you didn't even mention the tackle numbers: 6 tackles against Bournemouth. Oh, you said they more tackles than anyone else this season, and that's all fair enough. But it's 2 games. It's 2 games of his Man United career, and I think I might be doing him a slight disservice, but I'm pretty sure these are the only 2 games he's ever played well in holding midfield for United. Not the only 2 games he's ever played well for United, but when tasked with that specific role, under Van Gaal, he was just such a clearly not a good fit for the way Van Gaal wanted his defensive midfielders to recycle possession. Now, the new lease of life under Mourinho is wonderful, and against the right kind of team, Fellaini can be a fantastic partner for Pogba. But what he doesn't allow, Pogba's going to have to play deeper alongside Marouane Fellaini than he would alongside some of the other players. He's going to have to be doing more dropping back, picking up the ball, driving forward, which Pogba can obviously do and do wonderfully. But it does mean you're almost never going to get Pogba ahead of the ball in that system. And that's one of the reasons why. And plus, I just think there's still every chance that Fellaini's personal performance levels will dip again.
I think that's a big thing. I think in terms of how Fellaini played well at Manchester United so far in his career, has been as that advanced sort of target man central midfielder where he's getting into the area, where he's pressurising opposition. I thought Fellaini has performed well in the bigger games, the likes against Manchester City, Tottenham, Liverpool. Fellaini's always been good. My question marks come when Fellaini plays these weaker sides, the Southamptons, the Bournemouths, and quite frankly, he's gone against the trend for me, and he's really sort of showing that he can do it against these weaker sides. And I just think that Fellaini, if you can galvanise Marouane Fellaini, it adds so much more than the other options we have. You know, the physicality on its own of Marouane Fellaini is enough for me to keep him in this Mourinho side.
Go on, John, chip in.
I was gonna add to a little bit in terms of Marouane Fellaini being a liability. I think I'm in the same boat as Paul here. I think it's a bit too early to kind of judge where he's at in terms of his capabilities, and we've seen the bad sides to Marouane Fellaini. I mean, he's been through the David Moyes, Louis van Gaals, and we've seen what happens when the ship starts sinking. We've seen what happens when it gets bad on the pitch, and I think Marouane Fellaini is still just a bit of a liability to be tasking him with such an important role when you need somebody that's solid in that midfield alongside Paul Pogba, who can provide Pogba with that sort of creativity and freedom on the pitch. And I think if we put Fellaini next to him, it'll be too much of a liability, and I'm not too quite sure about that one.
Cheers, John. Now, one thing with Fellaini, which I want to make sure you guys hear here, is that Paul and John are not personally abusing Fellaini. Now, what happens a lot is people seem to think if you criticise a player, you personally just hate him. We've had it a lot with the likes of Rooney in the past.
I love him.
Other players where people seem to think, oh, you hate them because you criticise their performance. That's not the case. This is purely a footballing debate, and we all love Marouane Fellaini. Right, Paul, over to you, because I know you've got that opinion that it can be horses for courses a little bit, but you have picked a player that you think could be the ideal partner for Paul Pogba.
I have. I'm going to caveat this first off, though. This will be an argument that is very familiar to Dave, as many of his colleagues at Squawker have put this forward very eloquently. But United, to get the best out of Paul Pogba, shouldn't be looking at which one player should partner him. Yeah. Mourinho should absolutely switch to a 4-3-3 over time. This is, without doubt, the best way to get the best out of Paul Pogba, because we've seen how, even in one game for United so far, we've seen how much he can do in a two, and that does give Mourinho the luxury of building a system which can carry Rooney. And that's the only reason to play 4-2-3-1 at the moment. It doesn't make any sense from a footballing perspective, but from the kind of meta politics of the situation, all that kind of makes sense. So with that out of the way, the answer is 4-3-3. Pogba on the left, Schneiderlin and Carrick holding, and then one of Fellaini or Herrera on the right. That is the system that he should be playing. But if you've got to pick one, and even if you play 4-2-3-1, by the way, there are games for Fellaini, there are games for Carrick, there are games for Schneiderlin. But if you've got to pick one, and only one, out of all Man United's midfielder, you obviously want the second most talented midfielder in the United squad in the side next to him, and that is Ander Herrera. There's just no doubt. I mean, you talked about it not being a personal issue with criticisms of Fellaini, and what I'm about to say about Herrera will hopefully back that up, because I don't know that there are many footballers playing the game today who I have more personal affection for than Ander Herrera, and I recognise there are flaws in his game. I recognise there have definitely been games, particularly under Van Gaal, where he really went missing. But if you look back to that game against Bournemouth, I thought it was pretty obvious that after that it would be Herrera that missed out and when Pogba came in. But actually, I would have gone the other way because I think Herrera showed a tremendous tactical discipline in that game. And whenever I think about what he can do as a midfielder, I think about how he absolutely destroyed us when he was playing for Bilbao. And I think about those games you mentioned, the game against City, when Fellaini played very well, that little period in Van Gaal's first season when he was playing 4-3-3 and Herrera was just superb linking up with Mata on the right wing. He's an all-round defender. What you lose in physicality, which, by the way, you need less because Pogba's there, you gain in absolute tenacity, you gain in real high-level technical ability. So he can read what Pogba's going to do and react to it appropriately and kind of match him for little quick interchanges of passes and stuff in a way that Fellaini just isn't ever going to be able to do. And he's got much more energy than Carrick, obviously, and he's got more guile than Schneiderlin. So I think obviously that's a very attacking setup if you play Herrera and Pogba. But when you've got Zlatan, Martial, Mata, Herrera, Pogba, and a back four.
Say it again, Paul.
That's you've got a back four that's as functional as it is, and De Gea behind them. You can afford to take some risks. You can afford to kind of, especially against the smaller teams, you can afford to just blow them away, go 3-0 up in the first half, and that's. I think Herrera gives us the best chance to do that.
I love Ander Herrera.
Me too.
He's a great man. I think that was a great argument put forward by Paul. And I think what's a beautiful thing as well is that Manchester United have all these options in midfield. Do you remember the time of Darren Gibson, Raphael, Park Ji-sung in the middle of the park? Right, John, now is your time, as you just said.
Yes.
At the moment, I've got to say, I'm being purely biased on this one, but Ander Herrera is leading the league. So you've got a big shot here too. Sorry,
Honestly,
Dave.
this is
just
Believe in the
Dave.
Afro, Adam. Believe in it.
There's no point you being here, Dave.
This is just
There's no point.
straight up emotional manipulation. I was asked who to pick. I was like, Adam's going to be the judge. I'm picking Herrera.
Good move.
He knows. So, John, your shot now. Who have you picked and why?
All right, well, it's gonna be pretty hard to follow up after Dave and Paul, but I'm gonna give it a go here. And I think if I had to pick a pair for Paul Pogba, it'll have to be Morgan Schneiderlin. And my personal preference is just like Paul. I think we need to play.
Handsome.
Was
man.
that?
He's a handsome man. Sorry, John. I was just thinking about Morgan Schneiderlin.
He's an absolutely gorgeous man, but I think he can be a gorgeous midfielder as well. And I think my personal preference is that we play in a midfield 3, but. If it's regardless of midfield 3 or midfield 2, I think it has to be Morgan Schneiderlin. And I can sit here and hit you guys with stats like Morgan Schneiderlin raked in 89% passing accuracy last season, and all that, whatever. But Dave,
Oh, shots at Dave there.
that's my whole point is I can't do that. Obviously, Dave. Kill me in a heartbeat, so I'm going to steer away from that. And I'd rather discuss a little bit of the options that we have in terms of the midfield that best suits Pogba. And I just touched up on it a little bit before, but we need to build this midfield around Pogba. We need to pick the right players around him so that he can play his game. And that's where the specialists come in, and that's where the roles come in, and that's where the tactical awareness and things of that nature comes in. So I'm going to give you guys a little quick sales pitch here. I prepped this last night.
Yes.
All right.
This is delightful.
This is what we need, lads. When you want to debate, you come out with a clipboard, true LVG style.
Right here.
I
I'm
love
gonna hit you
this
guys with
shit.
I'm gonna hit you.
Come on,
You
John.
guys can see this as well, but if we're looking at it in terms of the if we're looking at it in the defenders area, you guys like this little cutout. But
What a champ.
I think if we play Morgan Schneiderlin just as a single pivot holding midfielder role, he can sit right on top of Daley Blind and Eric Bailly. And reason why Dave constantly brought up Marouane Fellaini here is because he can provide that defensive cover, sort of show that physique that Daley Blind lacks. But I think Morgan Schneiderlin can do that role just as well. I mean, not as well in terms of the strength, but maybe just as good without the elbows. And with the physical cover, I think we can still allow him to play in that single pivot role to show a bit of that composure. I think Morgan Schneiderlin definitely has what it takes to provide that midfield. If it was a midfield three with that composure, and people are gonna be like, composure. Nah. What about that guy? I don't know if you guys can see that, but yes, Michael Carrick is definitely, he's obviously the better man in terms of composure. I think he's probably the best choice when it comes to playing in that single pivot holding midfield role. But I think now is the right time to allow somebody like Morgan Schneiderlin to transition into this role and sort of take over the reins in terms of that holding midfield role, to allow him to gel with these players and allow him to gain that sort of experience that he needs for the future, for the years to come. And I think as much as I love Michael Carrick to death, it's now time to allow somebody like Morgan Schneiderlin. He's 26 years old, so now is the time when he's about to hit peak, if he's going to hit peak at Manchester United, and now is the time for him to actually go in there and play his role at Manchester United. And so if we're going to move over to discussing a little bit about Paul Pogba in reference to why we need to pick Morgan Schneiderlin, I'm going to stray off a little bit off topic here. In terms of the Juventus Paul Pogba versus the France Pogba, and I think the reason why Pogba wasn't able to thrive as in his usual self for France was due to the fact that there was a poor midfield choice decision being done by Didier Deschamps, in that I think he could have picked a better midfield trio to complement Paul Pogba's style of play. And if I remember correctly, I think he selected Matuidi and Sissoko many a times as opposed to playing somebody like Conte. And I think if we can have somebody like Morgan Schneiderlin in this Matuidi role, if we can have Paul Pogba allow him to roam the middle of the park, do his Pogba thing, and have somebody like Conte who's aggressive, who can harry opposition, who denies them time, who denies them space. Which midfielders best complement Pogba, rather than why specifically Morgan Schneiderlin deserves to play? Obviously, he has the characteristics to play in that role, and hence is the reason why I'm going for Morgan Schneiderlin. I'm sorry.
Excellent work there, John. Excellent preparation as well. That's what I love to see. Paul and Dave obviously couldn't be asked. Didn't even get a scrapbook out. Didn't get a flipboard out. So, John, well done, mate. Thank you. That's what we like to see. Dave, Paul, any arguments against Morgan of Schneiderlin?
You go first, Dave.
Well, I think firstly, Morgan Schneiderlin, I love him as a footballer, but again, I don't think he suits the role again. I think the best Morgan Schneiderlin is a Morgan Schneiderlin that's being aggressive, that's playing more of a shuttler role than a holding role, pressing teams in the final third. We saw Schneiderlin come in and out of that Louis van Gaal team. His win percentage was ridiculous when he was in the side, but Louis van Gaal just didn't fancy him. You go to the game against West Ham, the second to last game of the season, or third to get last game of the season. Schneiderlin couldn't really deal with getting pressed in that defensive midfield zone. He just couldn't deal with the ball. West Ham were very good at getting him in that area, and he got subbed off at half-time, and Michael Carrick came on, and United instantly improved. That's my only concern, is if teams can identify Morgan Schneiderlin as someone that they can get at and really close down and nick the ball in those dangerous areas, then it could be an issue tactically. So I like Schneiderlin, but I just don't think him and Pogba as a midfield works, and I think he's a bit unfavoured by Mourinho.
Yeah, this is the interesting question about Schneiderlin now, because on paper, when you were looking at the squad ahead of the season, this is the choice that seemed the logical choice, that you have Schneiderlin and or Carrick alongside Pogba. But the fact that Mourinho has followed up what Van Gaal did and slightly excommunicated Schneiderlin is kind of interesting, and I wonder why it is. A podcast co-host, Ed, has said ever since we signed Schneiderlin, he's just not of the required quality for Manchester United, and I don't know that I fully agree with that, but it's interesting to see that two managers in a row have gone with that option, and I think he's such a talented boxer. He so excelled as a box-to-box midfielder in a midfield two at Southampton that there is a logic to playing him alongside Pogba. But I wonder whether his kind of technical limitations as a footballer and that pressing issue. Although I think the one thing about that pressing issue is, wasn't he playing alongside Rooney in the centre of midfield in that game?
Rooney was ahead of him. But it was just the issue was at defensive midfield. Sorry, I'm going to have to do like a tactics board. In defensive midfield with two players ahead of him, he just struggled to deal with the pressure, and I think that is too much of an issue for me.
But I wonder whether that is a situation which is completely changed by Pogba's arrival, because the other team are going to have a lot more to think about this season than they did last season.
I think also with that we've seen that over these two games that this Mourinho side doesn't mind going back to David De Gea and David De Gea going long. That wasn't really an option under Louis van Gaal. So yeah, he did struggle with the press, but maybe it wasn't just him, that it was the system, it was the manager that meant that he was trying to play out, and it wasn't a situation where you should play out. I think under Mourinho we will go more direct, so maybe it's not an issue. I don't know.
You don't know much, do you, Dave?
So that Marouane Fellaini's going to win the Ballon d'Or.
I'm only playing. Don't kill me with stats, please. I love you, Dave. So obviously, you guys have mentioned Herrera, Fellaini and Morgan Schneiderlin, and we also have other options at the club as well, which is a great thing, but also a bit of a headache. We have Michael Carrick, who's in the latter years of his career, Timothy Fosu-Mensah, who, for my money, will be a permanent fixture in the starting lineup in the next few years at Manchester United. And also the likes of Bastian Schweinsteiger, who seems to be, could be on his way out, could be just staying at Old Trafford. Nobody really knows. Do you guys think any of those could stake a claim maybe for a spot in this team?
I think that it's more likely that Stormzy's going to get in the team alongside Paul Pogba than Bastian Schweinsteiger. Likely he's going to run out and re-sign Jason Park and play Bastian Schweinsteiger. All the pre-prepared material coming out. The thing about Carrick is I keep writing him off and then he keeps coming back and having decent performances from time and again. So I wouldn't be surprised to see another few good performances out of him. But the logical conclusion is that Carrick's legs have gone, and it really was evident last season, and he could be a phenomenal luxury in a midfield three against less physically dominant teams. But I can't see him getting that much time in a single pivot role as John so eloquently described it alongside Pogba.
Yeah, and I'd like to add a little bit
Dave,
about Carrick there. Carrick, although he can play that holding midfield role very well, one other characteristic that he really stands out for me is his mid-range to long-range passes. He doesn't ping balls like Scholes, but he definitely has the ability to split defenses through with his 20-yarders, 30-yard passes straight down the middle. And I think that if we can I think Paul put the word, I think you used the perfect word, luxury. I think if we can afford that sort of luxury like Michael Carrick, lose a bit of the legs, lose a bit of the distance covering, offensively, I think he could provide a lot.
The thing is that becomes slightly less valuable with Daley Blind in the team at centre-back, because he can kind of step out into midfield and play those same sort of passes, although how long we see Blind at centre-back under Mourinho, I think is a very open question.
I think Blind's done quite well there as well. I know you're not saying he hasn't, but I know he's not first choice centre-half. Dave, what about Bastian Schweinsteiger now? He's obviously an experienced player, obviously not the player he once was. His knees, I don't know, are they made of Play-Doh? He doesn't seem to be wanted at Manchester United. Is that a mistake by Jose Mourinho? Could he use his experience and his know-how?
It's a difficult one, but it's one where Mourinho's had to come in and oust a very popular member of the Louis van Gaal era. Bastian Schweinsteiger was, in a way, a captain there. Whenever he was on the pitch, he was controlling things. And maybe to move this side on, you need to take some captains out. We've seen at Manchester City, Joe Hart's been given the order and been chucked away for technical reasons because he can't play out from the back. But with Schweinsteiger, I think that he could work in this midfield, but it's very evident that Mourinho's already thrown him away. Not involved in any of the games so far this season competitively. So I think with him, it could work with Pogba. Pogba's very good at playing next to a playmaker, so he can make those forward runs. Someone like Schweinsteiger could find him in the final third, but I think it's over for him. I think Michael Carrick is probably a better option if United wanted to go to that three-man midfield against the bigger games tactically, a little bit more aware in a defensive sense. So I think for me, Schweinsteiger is, unfortunately, he's done.
Yeah, I think it's not even a question anymore, is it? It's that decision is made to Mourinho. There was an article in the Telegraph when he took over that said the first thing Mourinho does is he kind of does an interview with his players and basically pitches you're either in the boat or you're out of the boat, and it's very clear that Schweinsteiger's out of the boat.
Poor Schweinsteiger. I love that guy as well, but I suppose it is the right decision, especially when, as you've said before, we've got the likes of Timothy Fosu-Mensah who will be coming through as well. If you have Carrick and Schweinsteiger there, two experienced players, two older players, doesn't really make any sense, and you may as well just keep the one of them. Right then, we are approaching decision time in the huge midfield debate. And just before we go on to that, guys, I want to ask you, in the past, he has played alongside a few quality players. Ravel Morrison's one of them at Old Trafford, of course, in his reserve days here. And then, of course, the likes of Vidal, Khedira, Pirlo, some great names he's played alongside during his career. But who do you think he's worked best with? What kind of formations? Where has he played his best football? I know it's been Juventus and for France, but with what kind of players around him do you think he's best with?
I think firstly, at Juve, he played in a number of different shapes in midfield. You know, first when he was there, he played more of a shuttler ahead of Pirlo, next to Marchisio, with Vidal ahead of him. He wasn't the main attraction of that Juventus team. I think Pirlo was the one that was controlling it. He was sort of just got the job done. But then when the likes of Vidal left, Pirlo left, it sort of switched to a 3-5-2 Juventus, with Marchisio holding, Pogba sort of to the left-hand side of that, and then Khedira on the right. That really opened up Paul Pogba going in an attacking sense. Juventus, sometimes last season, they looked like a 3-4-3, where Pogba joined the likes of Mandzukic and Dybala to combine with them. And that's where I feel Paul Pogba is at his best, when he's in that inside left channel, when he is creating that final third, when he's linking with a left back or a left winger. But I think that you've got to get him into those zones, and that's what Juventus was so good at with Bonucci, with Marchisio playing those forward passes to get Paul Pogba into the final third.
Yeah, I'd say that there's a sort of like, ironically, Paul Pogba's best midfield partner at Juventus was Patrice Evra, because like the link up left hand side was really good, and also I suspect Patrice spent the entire season going, "Go on, go United, go United." It's great, you'll love it. It's great. It's gonna be a fascinating, all this stuff, seeing how it all plays out.
Having him down the left side as well, alongside Luke Shaw and Anthony Martial, has the makings of, oh man, I'm just drooling at the prospect of it. John, anything to chip in before we move on to the decision time?
No, I think the two gentlemen touched on everything I can probably possibly touch on. It was fantastic, but it's the multifunctionality of Pogba. It's the ability to have it's the option of having him on the pitch that allows us to build the team around him. And I think if we can allow him to soar, and I keep using this word freedom, and I'm not doing that because I'm American, but you gotta have that freedom for Paul Pogba to allow him to play his game. And I think he went to Juventus. He played alongside fantastic midfielders. Every sort of midfielder that he's played alongside had their own specific quality. Pirlo can make something out of nothing. Vidal was very aggressive. He can play that strong midfield role. And so he's learned his traits. He's played alongside these great players. And to be quite frank with you, at the time, Manchester United really didn't have the strongest of midfield. We were constantly bringing up the names like Raphael, Park Ji-sung, and all these other players and things of that nature. So.
Hey, I love Raphael.
I love Raphael to death. I'm not smacking on him. I'm just saying that he wasn't the midfielders.
He wasn't a midfielder.
Exactly. He wasn't the one to replace Paul Scholes. He wasn't the one to do things like that. So now is the time to let Paul Pogba play his game. And
yes, we can all agree on that. John, Paul, Dave, thank you for your arguments. It is now decision time, and I'm well split on this one. We've heard great argument for Herrera, a great argument for Fellaini, and a great argument for Schneidlin. Now, as I said at the start, I kind of had my mind made up. That was a little bit of mind games to get you guys to work harder. Now, my heart says Ander Herrera, my elbows say Marouane Fellaini, but my head says Morgan Schneidlin is the best partner for him, just because he has that balance. But what I will say is that once we stop. Now, I'm going to get criticized if I say this again, but I have to say it. I don't hate him when I say this, but once we stop sacrificing the team and building it around Wayne Rooney so much, I believe we'll be able to play that midfield three of Schneidlin, Herrera, and Paul Pogba, which I think will work amazingly. And in these 2-3 years' time, Timmy Fosu-Mensah comes in and the world's set. We're going to win the treble again, and basically United are the best. I'm back. And anything else I can add? Anything else you want to add, guys?
Yeah, there's just one other thing, which is I'm just future-proofing everything I've said here. Of what we've all kind of agreed that we want to play Pogba in a midfield three. The one tiny little caveat I have of that is he's only 23, And so actually it is possible that one of the reasons he's needed to be in a midfield three up till now is about his relative inexperience, which is kind of an odd thing to say about a player who's such a substantial figure and such a massive talent. But actually it's possible that he'll adapt and become better and better in a midfield two as he reaches his peak years. I'm just future-proofing myself here.
Midfield two of Timothy Fosu-Mensah and Paul Pogba.
Say it again.
You guys with that thought. I'll say it again. Timothy Fosu-Mensah, Paul Pogba, it's the future. Guys, thank you for joining us today. What we want you to do is get your comments in below. Now, we know there's going to be different options for different games, but we want your best partner for Paul Pogba. Get it in the comments below. Get your reasons why. Whose argument was best today? Did you like John's flipboard or whiteboard, whatever it is he pulled out? Did you like Dave's stats? And did you like Paul talking about Ander Herrera? Gosh, I love Ander. Anyway, guys, I'm Adam McCullough. This is Full Time Devils. We're out of here.
How's it going, guys? Gaz here for Full Time Devils. Now today I am at Carrington, which everyone knows, one of the world's most renowned gyms.